Today we are indulging ourselves in an exploration of the teachings of Epicurus on the question of the good life, the last of our Hellenistic philosophers. Follow along on From What We Gathered with Danny Nelson and Kylie Shahar.
In the land of teeter totters, I prefer a slide. Turbulent or gentle waters, let's go for a ride.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, Kylie.
All right, so to open things up, I've got a question for you.
I'm ready.
What I want to know is, has there ever been something that you did for pleasure, but it costs you too much? And the cost doesn't have to be money cost, but, time, energy, whatever. It costs you too much.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of those interview questions where I have to say, I was too good. I've been too good my whole life.
And it cost me.
It cost me so much for being too awesome.
Exactly.
It was really I think with this question, I was trying to think of something that was everyone would have been exposed to this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought about maybe when you've been working really hard at something and you're on vacation and you decide to go sit in the hot tub, in the evening time. Mm-hmm. And you've been indulging throughout the day and you get dehydrated. You sit in the hot tub for a few minutes too long.
Yeah.
And you start feeling a little dizzy and you're like, oh, I got to go get some water. Mm-hmm. I must go to bed immediately, even though it's only 9 p.m. because whatever the hot tub it did.
It did. Yeah.
So kind of a low grade, too much.
Right.
But it's something that's very approachable of a hot tub is awesome.
Yeah.
But you can sit in it for too long.
Too long. Yeah. Right.
And it's too hot.
Yeah.
And that's different for everyone. Whatever is too long is not the same for me and my husband.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What about you? Do you have anything that you're like, I love the pleasure of it?
So one thing that I thought of was, here's a general kind of way of characterizing it. I think saying yes to too many things that I think either I will enjoy doing or it'll be good for me in some way, like traveling, often traveling not just to go see family or, in the rare occasion just for fun, but it's usually travel to go see family or travel to a conference, an academic conference
which you need for your job.
Yeah, related to my job. So and it's great because that gives you the occasion to go travel and see somewhere new while also doing, these sort of rewarding things of sharing, new research with colleagues all over the place. But it's saying, nerd stuff, saying yes to too many things. And in particular, to travel, it's pleasurable because, I enjoy traveling. I enjoy seeing friends, seeing family, all these things. But sometimes the cost is too great in that I'm trying to manage too much, right? Whether I have classes that I'm teaching, students that depend on me for showing up and facilitating lecture and discussion. And so trying to navigate, other obligations that I have, it just sometimes I return from a trip and I'm just I've reached my limit. It's too overwhelming. All the things that I have to, try to catch up on and that I've been trying to get ahead of. So, yeah.
I do the same thing with event planning where I really love to produce and create these very unique events.
Yeah.
But there are definitely times where okay, it went off really great, but I have nothing left in the tank for my actual job to just go in and do the things. And so, and I put myself in that's the other part of this.
Right.
These are choices that I've made to say yes.
Right.
Even worse, more than saying yes, oftentimes it's me creating it.
It's you versus you.
It's just me being wouldn't it be amazing if there was a Bridgerton themed garden party on my lawn? And then,
That would be amazing.
I mean, it did happen. I'll show you pictures.
Okay.
It was really good.
So I can have FOMO.
Exactly.
Retroactive FOMO. But no, yeah, these are like really, I mean, really great examples. I think that probably a lot of our listeners can resonate with in different ways, like work stuff, you know, that brings you joy or satisfaction that you can, you know, pursue too much of it and it comes at a cost, or like travel or hot tubbing or like, I mean, just hanging out, going out with friends, right? Sometimes even that puts you over your limit, both in the sense of now you have to, like, what is the cost? Rest. What is the cost? I mean, a hangover, right? If you're going and drinking out with your friend, you know,
money that you're spending,
right?
That might be a whole thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are, just like with anything, but there are, you might think, quote unquote, costs or consequences or, you know, pains that result from our pursuit of pleasure. But, you know, the one thing to say is, like, pleasure, although it can, you know, you might think spiral out of control, pleasure itself is not a bad thing, at least not how Epicurus is thinking about it. So, you know, the point in thinking about, you know, thinking through any of these examples, or thinking through like perhaps the costs that are associated with pursuing pleasure, this gets us thinking about Epicurus and some of his fundamental principles or ideas kind of at the center of his conception of a good life, right? And it has to do with pleasure and pain, but maybe there are some initial kinds of misconceptions about the kind of Epicurean view that, right, Danny, you can kind of start to unearth by getting us to the background, to the hot goss.
Let's do it. Let's get to what these guys were up to.
What were they up to?
So again, Epicurus, just like all of our Hellenistic philosophers that we're talking about in this first four, all lived in this kind of 300 to 400 BC time period, like very early Hellenistic age of antiquity, you know, what we think of philosophers in antiquity. And he founded a school called the Garden, which I think is very much, it seems like Epicurean, that there would be like the garden. And one of the things I actually really appreciate about him as a philosopher is this kind of commune is what I will relate the garden to, because it was outside of Athens. It was like purposely not in the actual city proper, as he did allow women and slaves to come and be a part of his school. So there was no like kind of cost limit or, you know, gender or anything like that, that had to do with being able to join his school. And one of the things that, if you've ever heard of Epicurus, you probably haven't heard of Epicurus. You've probably heard of Epicureanism, or someone just being called Epicurean.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of, now what that means is kind of hedonistic love of food. Most of the time it has to do with food, like eating very rich, fancy food in unlimited amounts. Yeah. And that's kind of seen as this kind of like overindulgence, and that kind of sorts back to like Epicurus being his main kind of ideal. If you were like sum it up in the elevator, he would say that the purpose of a good life is to seek out pleasure and to live in pleasure every day, all the time. The problem with this is way back when, even thousands of years ago, some other philosophers, mostly Stoics, may have started smear campaigns. So essentially, the Stoics were like, hey, like, we actually, what you should be doing is not seeking pleasure or pain. You should just be what virtues kind of are applied in these areas. And Epicurus's point is there should be kind of a natural attunement towards what is correct living. And that attunement is being in a state of pleasure. Like when you are eating the right things, exercising the right amount, sleeping really well, eating healthy. So like not just the right amount, but also healthy things. When you're indulging your mind in good learning, good conversation, when you're having great experiences with your friends and family and loved ones, like, you should feel pleasure in that kind of being in tune. And for him, that meant to avoid pain. So it's not just seeking pleasure. It's also seeking pleasure in a way that avoids pain. And that can mean that either too little pleasure or too much pleasure is how you end up in pain. Well, because of this like desire to like the smear campaign, stoics and stuff, they wanted to go and make Epicurus like, what are they doing out there in the garden? Like, they're just indulging themselves in all this hedonistic activity focused on pleasure into these like this level of indulgence that's like a sickening level of an undisciplined sickening form of indulgence. And Epicurus is over there being like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I promise. That's not what this is about.
That is wrong.
You're misconstruing what I'm saying, and you're doing it on purpose. And then they're like,
smear campaign.
Exactly. And they're like, well, we're very popular. So.
So we must be right. Because, so it's like they're, and it's funny because, of course, then that kind of characterization of Epicureanism is the one that seems to persist throughout history so as to be co-opted by those who want to use the term Epicurean to pick out the sort of base carnal pleasure seeker who's just about like overindulging and pleasure seeking to the max. And it's like, we can think about kinds of examples that could illustrate that kind of characterization, right? Like somebody that immediately comes up off the top of my head is like somebody like Charlie Sheen, who, overindulged most certainly in a great many substances and
tiger blood and
just all the things that seem like it's just for pure pleasure, right? And then he sought those things and sought them to such an extreme level, right? Like from the perspective of the smear campaign, Charlie Sheen is an Epicurean, but that is not at all what Epicurus's teachings or following is. He
would have been showing up being like, no, I promise. That's not what I want.
No way. He would have been saying like, no way. Like Charlie Sheen, right? When he was in the throes of his substance abuse and all of the things that came along with it, like Epicurus would have said, that is not a person who's living a good life. That is not a flourishing individual, even despite the fact that he might proclaim from his, pleasure-seeking state of mind, like, I'm living an amazing life, like, this is great, things are going well. Epicurus would say, nonetheless, that is not flourishing, that is not a good life, and just because he's pleasure maxing does not mean that he's sort of conforming to the fundamental principle of a good life, which Epicurus takes to be, right, not just pleasure, but also the avoidance of pain. And this pleasure and the avoidance of pain, right, it being this fundamental principle of a good life, is both physical and intellectual pleasure and avoidance of pain. And so somebody like Charlie Sheen, or maybe in some ways Samantha from Sex and the City. Maybe somebody like that too. Like that's not the Epicurean model of flourishing. Right. It's not just pleasure seeking to the max. It's not Homer Simpson,
More donuts. More donuts. We love to think about our donut hero.
We do.
And I will say, it wasn't like hedonism was a new thing during this time. Hedonism was actually well known, like, in many early philosophical writings, there is this kind of anti-hedonism. There's this kind of example of like too much indulgence is known to be, because, you get into once civilization is happening.
Right.
And there is this ability to have too much.
Right.
Like pre-civilization, having an indulgence of riches was rare.
Right.
But once you get into society, and most of the time this is going to go hand in hand with being rich, in civilization, which just goes to tell you how much, like, as a society, we've come so far in what is like every person has
For sure.
kind of available to them.
Yeah.
But even in this time period, to have unlimited kind of like wine and
Right.
meats and oils and whatever kind of also went with a very rich kind of
Right.
possibly lazy lifestyle.
Yeah. Right. And it's like even in those kinds of, lifestyles, I think Epicurus is thinking that the tendency toward overindulgence will just usher in more problems,
Right.
And so it's like the point in advancing or affirming this principle of like pleasure and the avoidance of pain is really like, we could think about it as kind of like slightly recharacterized to thinking about a kind of ethics of inner peace, or like a pleasant condition, which sometimes might mean looking to do the things that will remove physical or intellectual pain from your life, right? So it's not just how do I add pleasure, so to speak, like how do I fill the jar, this metaphorical jar, how do I fill it with pleasure? Sometimes what we need to do to kind of achieve a state of being well is to try to work to remove things that are causing us to have, intellectual or physical pain, which you might think like, then that sets the bar so low. Like the principle of a good life is just removing pain. Like, so what? So you could be just kind of
Easy.
like at a neutral.
Don't get punched in the face.
Right. Avoid getting punched in the face. Don't be in debt. I don't know.
Yeah.
Which it's like, okay, but then it's like easier said than done, right?
It is. Yeah,
So-
it is. And that's one of the things that's really cool about even the idea of all of these kind of virtue ethics is it's very simple.
Yeah.
What you're trying to strive
Yeah.
for to say.
Yeah.
The complexity in the day-to-day life is very difficult.
Yes.
And in some ways, I just want to throw out a few easy ways to kind of understand this
Yeah.
kind of pleasure compared to pain thing.
Yeah.
For me, a slice of cake.
Yeah.
The the tasting,
Yeah.
the joy, my tummy feeling like, delicious. Like that is, have a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Epicurus would never be like, you should never have cake.
Right.
He would say, have a piece of cake. But having a cake,
The whole cake.
the whole cake,
Yeah.
my stomach hurts.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
I obviously am over sugar. I probably am feeling jittery
Yeah.
and shaky.
You're going to crash really
I'm
bad
I'm
later.
going to have a crash
Oh,
later.
you're going to be so mean.
Probably multiple days. How do you know about my sugar crashes? What do you know, Kylie? But yeah, so that's that like kind of different. Same thing. I mean, a lot of times it's very easy to talk about like alcohol, like
Yes.
a glass of wine.
Right.
You're feeling talky,
Yeah.
like it feels great.
Warm.
Like 2 bottles of wine.
Ooh, sloppy.
Sloppy.
Pain. Okay,
You're-
you're going to do some embarrassing.
Yep. You're going to be hungover the next day.
Oh, I can't even think about that.
If
Oh.
you're doing it for a long period of time, again,
Not
cost the actual money cost of
Yes.
it, then you're financially like.
Absolutely.
So there's these whole rolling. Same with cake. If I'm buying a cake every
Every
day
day?
and eating a cake every day,
Not good.
that kind of gluttonous behavior
Yeah.
is going to cause me pain.
Right.
But when we talk about intellectual pain,
Yeah.
there's also these indulgences that you might have that hurt you intellectually.
Yeah.
Like obsessing over somebody saying something mean to you. Okay,
Yeah.
let's even just go
Right.
for driving,
Yeah.
because most of us are drivers.
Yeah.
It is very indulgent to blame every bad driver's decisions
Yeah.
that they are based on you. And you are causing yourself intellectual pain
Yeah.
by presuming that the reason they stopped short was because it was an aggression against you.
Right.
And not just that they were distracted by their phone
Or a bad
and
driver.
didn't realize in the last minute. Yeah, or they're just a bad driver. The likelihood is number 1, they're a bad driver.
Right.
Second likelihood is they're distracted driving.
Yeah.
Third likelihood
Yeah.
is a million other
Yeah,
things.
right,
The
totally.
millionth one is that they saw you doing something and now they're annoyed at you and they
exactly.
stop short. To do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's an example of like intellectually you might be causing yourself pain,
Right.
but also you might cause yourself intellectual pain through not sleeping well.
Right.
You didn't give yourself the time or ability to sleep, which you derive much pleasure from.
Oh, I love sleeping.
Like, but you can sleep too
I know,
much.
I can, and I have, and I've woken up after sleeping too much, left myself to my own devices, meaning I didn't turn my device, i.e. alarm, on, slept too long, and then you wake up feeling like, oh, I feel like I do. I'll feel terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, just like there is this, you can sleep too much, I've discovered. And so like even the things that are good for you, even the things that bring you joy, satisfaction, a pleasant condition can be overdone, right? Like you can overdo it. And then like the paradigm case is like substance use, substance abuse, but even down to the things that are good for you.
Jogging.
Right?
You can have great endorphins and whatever, but at some point,
right,
you might go too far.
you just do it too much.
You do it too much.
You hurt your knees. You're going to hurt your knees. You could hurt your hand. You know what I mean? All the things like, and it's, you were doing both something that brings you joy and peace and tranquility, and also something that you did too much. You took it too far. But I mean, so like, I think, one thing to think about with respect to Epicurus's this fundamental principle of a good life is, I think, it's all kind of, what's really sort of interesting is that it's not that he has to give you some kind of like independent argument for why, we should pursue pleasure and avoid pain. Like, it's just kind of obvious, right? Pleasure is good, pain is bad, right? The pleasure that you get from the warmth of being near a fire is good, right? Especially if it's cold outside, right? The pleasure that you get from being near the fire is good. And you don't have to explain. It just is. It's just good. The pain you would get from being inside of the fire, right? Like you climbed inside the bonfire.
Yeah.
Pain. That's not good. You don't have to say why. It just hurts. It's painful. It's not good.
Now that, we've created this context between pleasure and pain,
Yeah.
like you said, it's intuitive.
It's intuitive.
But there are other places where Epicurus puts this out to action that seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, right. So,
and there's one of his greatest teachings.
Yeah.
Or clearly separate Epicureanism from Stoicism, from cynicism, from Aristotelian philosophy, is this idea about what?
Is this idea about death and what death is to us, and especially, when people fear death, he thinks that it's not good for us to fear death. And, part of it comes down to, you might think like, well, it seems like it will just agonize you to think about death. The thing is inevitable. Why would you agonize, about something that's inevitable? But he kind of approaches it from a slightly different angle. Epicurus approaches it from a slightly different angle because, right, again, all of this is kind of grounded in like sense experience, right? And so like he's thinking good and bad, pleasure and pain, you receive that through sense experience, touch, taste, smell, etc. And so he's thinking that, we aim for things that bring us pleasure. We aim to avoid things that bring us pain because, through the senses. And then he sort of reflects on like death. What is death to us? Well, he sort of concludes that death is nothing to us. And by that, he means like it's nothing to fear, for instance, but it actually is nothing to us because what death is fundamentally is the absence or the privation, the absence of any sense experience, right? So he's saying like when you're dead, you do not have the capacities for sense experience. And so you do not have the capacity to experience pleasure or pain. So death is a kind of nothingness.
Right.
And so
so it shouldn't be considered.
Yeah.
Like it is essentially, I like at one point in this really famous letter that he wrote that he's just like, your dead self has no consideration for your live self. So why would your live self have any consideration for yourself?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what up with that jerk in the future?
Yeah.
Dead me.
Yeah. Not considering me here.
Right now in this dimension. And this is a lot different than other Hellenic. In fact, it is the opposite of Stoic thought, which is that death should always be on your mind.
Yeah.
Like you should always be aware that at any moment death could be upon you. And so the way that you live your life from moment to moment should have meaning.
Yeah.
And you should put that meaning into it through these kind of disciplined thoughts.
Yeah.
Whereas Epicurus is like, but you shouldn't plan your life in proportion to its ending.
Yeah.
You should spend each day being like, how could I have the most pleasurable day?
Yeah. Yeah. How can I be in a kind of pleasant condition while I'm here, while I'm alive, while I have the capacity for, pleasure and pain, because I have these, sense experience capacities. Like, let me be in a pleasant condition while I'm here, while I'm alive. And that includes like not having fear and anxiety about the prospect of death, because like death is, when you exist, when you're alive, sensing and perceiving and experiencing pleasure and trying to avoid pain, death doesn't exist, right? While you exist, death doesn't exist. But when death is present, you no longer exist. You no longer have the capacity. It's not like it's going to be a painful condition. It's the absence of any kind of sense experience. And so it's like, why would you spend time, he's thinking, why would you spend time thinking or worrying about it when it's nothing to you? But here's like a question for Epicurus, or for thinking about it in this way, is it's like, well, it's not necessarily, I think most of us, when if we reflect on death, right, and when we do, it's not like the death itself that is scary. It's not like the sudden privation or absence of sense experience that's like the thing that worries you or instills fear. It's like the not being able to like hang out with people. If it's sickness or suffering, or then like no longer being able to be around people that you love and share these experiences, or
you're gonna miss people,
and you're gonna miss people.
And this is what Epicurus says about that, is those thoughts, that worry over sickness, suffering, missing your friends or family is causing you pain. So you should not do that. You should not think about those things or worry about those things, because you're bringing pain to yourself that is unnecessary. That's something you are creating in your mind to create pain for yourself. And so you should spend that same time that you would be, I'm going to miss my friends and family so much. Well, then go be with your friends and you should, the pleasure side of that you're causing yourself pain by thinking of not being with them. So the opposite side of that is then you should go be with them. As much as possible. If it pains you to not be with them. And I will say that's part of the whole thing with his commune, is one of the things he believed, back to friendship, our last series, is that you should surround yourself and live with your friends. Like they shouldn't just be like, if they are your friends and friends of virtue, of course, if they are your actual for real friends of virtue, why would you not want to live with them and be with them on a regular basis? And I think that's a question that a lot of people find when they have like a good group of friends. They're like, why aren't we living together on a commune? Outside of society, doing whatever we like to do.
Growing our food and making art.
Which I'm sure is what the Epicureans were doing.
For sure.
They were
for sure.
Just out there. I mean, it was called the garden, so.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good And then imagine we're like, okay, for the applied philosophy this week, go start a commune with 20 of your closest friends from childhood, all of whom are friends of virtue, I presume.
I presume this whole time you guys have been really at it intellectually, emotionally.
Exactly.
You've all kept up great physicality. So
I'm
you're
sure.
ready for this commune life.
Because we're not having a cake a day. Exactly.
When you just said cake a day, my mouth salivated.
I know.
That's how much I love cake.
I know. Carrot cake, which, I love a carrot cake.
It's so spicy
healthy.
and delicious.
It
It's
is.
healthy. It has carrots.
It has carrots.
I mean, that's all you need in a cream cheese frosting.
That's true.
Just to show how we're not.
I know. At all. Yeah.
Virtuous lives.
Exactly.
Yet. You work at it every day.
Yes. It's an ongoing project.
All of this is practice
Yeah.
until you are actually facing it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
exactly.
I mean, that's part of the thing. But for real,
For
on
real.
our applied philosophy,
reals.
if you're not going and making a commune with all of your besties,
Yeah. Plan B.
is just to do something that is purely for pleasure, that does not have that you can see does not have a long-term consequence.
Yeah.
So again, not eating a whole
Right.
cake, but if you know there's a pastry that you love,
Yeah.
go and get that pastry today.
Yeah.
And be like, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the pleasure of this pastry
Yeah.
or this ice cream cone.
Or go see a movie.
Go see a movie in the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day.
Just go.
Like you might think, oh, but I have work to do and I'm guilty for not doing.
It's too nice out to go to a movie theater.
Maybe that's just what you want to do, and you find that that's what's going to bring you a little bit of pleasure to your day if you foresee that it doesn't have some cost.
Go walk outside, or be like, oh, I'm trying to think of ways to, like, oh, I'm realizing everything I do for pleasure has kind of an indulgent tinge to it.
Right.
Consider, how do you back off just enough to not have it be painful?
Yeah. Right.
Like, what is that point that the line
Yeah.
that you might be able to create yourself? Like, if you're like, oh, I love to go jogging, but it has become painful, but only when I hit the 5th mile.
Right.
Don't run the 5th mile.
Yeah.
Just run the 4 miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that I'm using this example when I'm like, I don't know the last time that I jogged.
Yeah.
Really.
Me either. So on that note, we do hope you take this opportunity at least to do something, or at least to then just like reflect a little bit about, this kind of ethics of inner peace and a pleasant condition, and think a little bit more, just giving more of a second thought to what it means to live well, especially from this Epicurean, enlightened Epicurean standpoint, not the smear campaign version.
But yeah, just like, what am I doing from day to day?
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of people who are like very career driven, or like, they're trying to make sure that everything in the societal expectations are taken care of. And I see a lot of time that gets put above personal pleasure. And I think that takes some consideration. If you have a job that literally provides you no pleasure when you spend, a quarter of your life there, I think that's something to think about.
Right.
Could you have less money and more happiness by having a different job?
Right. Yeah.
Could you have the same amount of money just doing a different job, but you just gave up looking because you were like, this is easy and it's just here, but every day I'm pained being there, Just something to think about.
Yeah. Real life application.
Yep, absolutely.
Always. From What We Gathered is brought to you with gratitude by Tyler Olson, our sound producer, editor, performance wrangler, Danny Nelson, co-host and producer, and me, co-host Kylie Shahar. A special thanks to Sam Fisher for our music, and thank you to those from whom we've gathered, our teachers, scholars, historians, lovers of wisdom, the internet, and of course, thank you, our listeners.